the New Living.
And
Yeah.
Karen.
Well, I got a ton of people are out, so it may just be you and Ben. Mary Jane texted me last night at 10 o'clock and said,
Stacy would read.
well, does she want to do one of those? I don't think Karen's coming. You want to see if Stacy will do the message?
Okay.
You sure?
She's sitting beside me.
Okay. Hey, good morning, everybody. I hate to interrupt the good fellowship and the talking and the coffee drink. You keep drinking coffee. Woo! We are really glad that you're here today. I know from texting people to read some scriptures in class today that we have got a lot of folks traveling this week. And so I guess if anybody happens to be watching online with us from wherever they are, we hope you're safe and having a good trip. And for those of you that are here in person, we're excited to have you here today, and I hope all you guys are safe. And I know I heard some of you walking in saying you still didn't have power. So I hope that gets fixed quickly. I would say you could come stay with us, but we had kids show up that normally don't stay with us. They just randomly showed up and started eating our food and washing their clothes. I'm like, wait, where'd y'all come from? Y'all don't live here anymore. But anyway, it's
that open door policy.
yeah. Well, I didn't say it was their mom apparently said it was a. No, I'm kidding. I know we have some church members that had a lot of damage, and maybe some of you in here in class, and so we're glad that you're physically okay. We can fix the other things, but we're glad that you guys are okay. I know especially the Plantation Springs area was hit really hard, and a lot of our members live there. And so anyway, we'll continue to pray. And what you don't need to forget is if a week from now, a month from now, or 6 months from now, if something comes up, you need to let somebody know, let us help you. I know a lot of people were out in neighborhoods yesterday helping folks with debris cleanup and chainsaws and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I appreciate the Crosspoint Church family and the things that you guys do to help each other. But what we're going to do for the next 35 minutes is study James, where we've been for the last few weeks. So if you want to go to James chapter 2, James chapter 2, we're going to dig into a new section. Let me go ahead and give you a heads up for next week. Exciting. We're going to have a panel discussion. A group of 3, 4, 5 folks will be here, and they're going to talk through some of the things that we have talked about in the past and maybe move into a couple of new things. I'm going to be in Pisgah, Alabama next weekend. I don't know if anybody knows where that is. Go to Scottsboro and drive about 20 more minutes out in the middle of nowhere, and that's where I'll be for a wedding. My oldest son by my first wife. That's how my dad used to introduce me. Can I use a Don Killen joke in class? He's introduced me to that for 50 years, so 53 years, I guess. But anyway, Gates and Rita's wedding, and I'm doing that, and we're excited. But we're not going to come back till Sunday afternoon. So we have an awesome panel that's going to be up here. Ben Campbell's going to host and MC that panel and talk about some of these things that we've been looking at in James. So that's next Sunday. Hope you'll be back for that. All right, James chapter 2 is where we're going to get to some new material. You know, I like to give just a quick Robin Saxon math. Do they still do Saxon math? Is that gone from our systems? We did Saxon math when I was in high school, and the premise of Saxon math was you always were reviewing. You even 6 months after you covered something, they were to go back and pull a problem from a math lesson from the beginning of the year. So I like to give you just a quick review. James 1:1, it's important to remember the book was written to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations. And that first week we talked about how that was right around the time in Acts 8 with Stephen's stoning in Acts 8 verse 1. And it says that a great persecution broke out against the church, and all except the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. So James is writing this book to these Jewish Christians that are scattered, that are running for their lives, basically, because they've decided to follow this new way, this new teaching. Then we spent a lot of time in those first three verses, verses 2 through 4 of James 1, because it talked about trials. And what we found out in talking to you guys and texting and emailing is that a lot of us are going through stuff. Okay? And I'm not going to look at anybody in particular. I don't want you to raise your hand or admit it right now. But some of you and some of us talked, we're going through stuff. And maybe not exactly what these folks were going through in the book of James, but a lot of people in our class, a lot of people in our church, a lot of our friends and family members, maybe you're going through a trial of some kind. And it may not, for whatever you're going through, it may not be significant to somebody else, but it's significant to you. And we're not want to make light of it. And what we really encouraged each other to do that week is to lean in on each other. And don't be afraid to talk about it. Don't be afraid to share it. And to talk to friends and talk to our elders here at Cross Point, or talk to a minister and just say, man, I am struggling. I'm going through something right now and I need some help. And again, what we try to do, we're studying James, but what does this mean now? It's like, oh, well, these people are going through trials and they're scattered and being persecuted, and we move on to the next. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to you in 2023? And so we moved on and said, what do you do? What do you do if you're going through a trial? Well, if you need help, if you're lacking wisdom, if you're not sure what to do about it, James says, ask God. We moved on through chapter 1. God's going to give generously. He's not going to rebuke or blame. Then we moved last week into the end. We had a week off with Danny and Nancy Smelser on our Mission Sunday. And then last week we moved to the end of chapter 1, and we talked a little bit about action. How to put our faith into action, how to, we use this example. If you're in your marriage, if you say, I love you, well, what goes with that? Is it just, I love you and you know I do? Well, what if you say to God, I love you, what goes with that? If you say, hey, I'm a Christ follower, what goes with that? And he ends that book with kind of what we would maybe call a famous part of it, is when he talks about religion that's pure is to look after orphans and widows. That's the example he gives. He says, you know what? Because the previous verse, it says, if you consider yourself religious and don't keep a tight rein on your tongues, you deceive yourself and your religion is worthless. So what we talked about was, you know what? Don't just sit around and stew about it and talk about it and get upset about it. James says, hey, you know what? Maybe go out and take care of a widow. Maybe go take care of someone in foster care or adoption, or get involved with that kind of activity. And maybe that keeps you out of some of that stuff, that idle talk. And so there you go. That gets you up to where we are now into chapter 2. So we talked about trials and temptations and being a good listener, acting on the mission of Jesus. But then James moves into a very specific example in chapter 2, all right? So here's what I want to do. I've really started trying to do more of this. I hope it's okay with you guys. We've got some folks that are going to read some passages. So if you want to go in your Bible to James chapter 2, verses 2, 3, and 4. James chapter 2, verses 2, 3, and 4. And what I've asked some folks to read some of the more, what I call modern translations, if that's okay. And I really want you to listen to what they say, because this is a very specific example that James deals with here in chapter 2. So Robin Phillips has got James 2 through the New Living Translation, and then we're going to go right from Robin to Stacy is going to read from the Message. So listen to both of those 3 verses Listen up and see what you pick up on.
For example, suppose someone comes into your meeting dressed in fancy clothes and expensive jewelry, and another comes in who is poor and dressed in dirty clothes. If you give special attention and a good seat to the rich person, but you say to the poor one, you can sit over there or else sit on the floor, well, doesn't this discrimination show that your judgments are guided by evil motives?
All right, thank you, Robin. Stacy's got the message for us. Take a listen.
If a man enters your church wearing an expensive suit and a street person wearing rags comes in right after him, and you say to the man in the suit, "Sit here, sir, this is the best seat in the house," and either ignore the street person or say, "Better sit here in the back row," haven't you segregated God's children and proved that you are judges who can't be trusted?
I'm going to give you what's called the easy-to-read version, and then Ben Campbell over here has got a version called the New Testament for Everyone. Y'all might not even heard of some of these. That's okay. But I just wanted to use some different translations today and for you to hear it. Here's easy to read. Suppose someone comes into your meeting wearing very nice clothes and a gold ring. At the same time, a poor person comes in wearing old, dirty clothes. You show special attention to the person wearing nice clothes. You say, sit here in this good seat. But you say to the poor person, stand there or sit on the floor by our feet. Doesn't this show that you think some people are more important than others? You set yourself up as judges who make bad decisions. Now, Ben's got New Testament for Everyone, James 2.
What I mean is this: if someone comes into your assembly wearing gold rings, all dressed up, and a poor person comes in wearing shabby clothes, you cast your eyes over the person wearing fine clothes and say, "Please, have a seat up here." But then you turn to the poor person and say, "Stand there," or "Get down there by my footstool." When you do this, are you not discriminating among yourselves? Are you not turning into judges with evil thoughts?
Thanks, Ben, Robin, and Stacy. Appreciate that. Last one, we're going to give you one more. Like I said, I had some of our readers text me last night that they were going to wind up going out of town for spring break. So here's one more. This is the funny one. It's called The Voice. It's not the television show. There's no red chairs or buttons or anything. But if an affluent gentleman enters your gathering wearing the finest clothes and priceless jewelry, don't trip over each other trying to welcome him. Why are y'all laughing? That doesn't happen in 2023, does it? And if a penniless bum crawls in with his shabby clothes and a stench fills the room, don't look away or pretend you didn't notice. Offer him a seat up front next to you. If you tell the wealthy man, "Come sit by me, there's plenty of room," but tell the vagrant, "Oh, and these seats are saved, go over there," then you'll be judging God's children out of evil motives. Man, listen, I know we read it over and over and over, but are you getting the gist of it? I mean, I know this is a familiar section of Scripture for us, but James, it's interesting to me, shifts from how to serve, pure religion and all that, and then he goes right into this section on favoritism. Don't do it. You know, in the Right Now Media series, if you ever want to go back and watch it from 2015 on the book of James, it says the only distinction that we should have is God and man. There's not levels among us. Now, that's not to say that we don't do it, but we're not supposed to. And it could be, and I know we don't want to do this. I know I don't want to offend you when I say this, and I'm just trying to make an example, but it's like, but wait a minute. My great-granddad was on the board at Lipscomb, right? I mean, we find our own. I have been on 13 mission trips. I mean, do we not begin to find ways to make ourselves to feel just a little, we're almost the same, but I'm just a little more important. What does Paul say about that list about those achievement lists. If you go back into some of his books, I think he calls it something bad, something that smells bad. Well, filthy rags, I think he calls it dung, right? Because Paul says, man, I got the list. I got the list. If you're going to go on list, I'm better than all of you. But the list isn't what saves us. All that matters is what Christ did for us. And as I was getting ready for class, I was already getting ready for it last week because I'm trying to get ahead because of the wedding and all that stuff. And last Sunday afternoon, I get a call about 2 o'clock about some homeless in our city. And actually got 3 different phone calls from Crosspoint members that had been contacted by someone that didn't go to church here, that had encountered some homeless guests in downtown. And Room in the Inn, which is an organization that we work with and we use our building, they had stopped for the season. That's not a judgment on them. I'm just saying they had stopped for the season. It was just, that was their time that they did. But you remember last weekend, it was cold. And I was thinking in terms of James 2:2-4, and the rich and the filthy rags and I'm thinking, can I say this? Every now and then you want to go, oh, it's Sunday afternoon. I may have actually fallen asleep sitting straight up in a chair and not realized it when the phone rang. Am I not the only one that does that by your reactions? And so people went into action. And some of you are in here, and I'm not going to embarrass you, but we could have said, well, that's the Room in the Inn's problem. That's their problem. That's their ministry. That's their thing. That's their problem. Or we could have said, well, I heard the post office is open. They can go in there. No. What people did is they rolled their sleeves up and they said, we have to do something about this. There's no judgment. Well, why are they homeless in the first place? There's jobs all over there. They just took care of people. And they got food, and they got buses, and they got cots, and they got things, and they got it all out, and they got it set up, and they took care of folks. We got to have somebody spend the night. Y'all know that's the hardest thing, is to get somebody to spend the night, right? Somebody said, I'll do it. I got it. We can't let these folks sleep outside. I got it. Well, and then so Monday morning rolls around. It's like, well, it's going to be cold tonight too. So they did it again. Just repeated it again. And they ate and fellowshiped and talked and got to know and asked how they could help. And I guess I just was thinking, what would James say now? I mean, this is James writing this book a long time ago. But he says, he's talking about how people dress, what they possess. We make prejudgments about people, and that goes on now. Okay? And I'm not going to hammer that. Maybe money and clothing isn't as big of a deal in 2023. I don't think clothing is as big of a deal at Crosspoint. I don't know the last time I've worn a tie to church, and it's okay. Right? It is okay, isn't it? Okay. I just want to make sure. I'm doing this wedding Saturday. I had to go buy a suit. I don't own one. And I work at Crosspoint. So I guess in my mind, maybe the clothing thing isn't that big of a deal, but yet I'm thinking it may not be a big deal because nobody's persecuted me. See, sometimes things aren't a big deal because they don't affect us. I've learned a lot over the last couple of years because my son is marrying a young lady whose family's from Mexico. So see, I've learned a lot. I've begun to look at things through a different lens than I had ever looked at things before. Are y'all getting where I'm going with that? Rita has taught me some things. And so maybe our thing here, maybe our thing may be more religious heritage or the length of time you've attended a church might make you important. I don't know what the modern day example to that. It may be just how we make people feel seen. I don't know what James would say if he was writing it now. I don't know. It would be, listen, I understand that your family attended Pine Street. And I understand your family may have been a big deal at Darby Drive, or understand that your family may be a big deal at Cross Point. Maybe that's the thing James writes about, if he writes it now. But what I think, whatever it is, I think James says, don't do it. Don't show favoritism. There's just equal footing at the base of the cross. That's where he's going with this section. And listen, I'm going to tell this story because it happened a long time ago, and nobody's in the room that even was a part of it, so I don't think it'd be offensive. But this really happened. All right. We had a visitor here several years ago, and I had somebody come up and get me and say, listen, I need you to meet this person. They're moving here from Huntsville. And man, you know this business over there on such and such street, and lucrative, and they hire this many employees, and they're moving here, and they're going to be here. And listen, I can't believe what kind of SUV they drove up in the parking lot. And maybe you and Gina could take them to lunch. And I'm like, it was like they just hit me with so many like facts and figures, and I was like, what? Okay. I thought about that when I was working on this lesson, because here's what I wondered. Can I give you a different example from that one? There's somebody out here, it's the first time they've ever been to Cross Point. They just got out of jail on Friday. And we had to go up to the Friendship Center to get them some clothes because they didn't have any clothes to wear. They caught a ride to get over here because they don't own a car. Mark, maybe you could get the deputy that we hire out there in the lobby to keep an eye on them. Now, maybe we don't say it, but do we think it? See, guys, I'm just trying to get you to think. It's what does James chapter 2 mean for you now? Again, it's easy to read it and think about those Jews and what's going on and go home, and then we go to Wendy's and we forget about it. What does James chapter 2 mean to you now? Because James, we read it, version after version after version. Don't do it. Don't look at the clothes and the people and the money and brush off. Listen, you've got you a seat right here. Man, we are so excited to have you here. And to the other person, we say, listen, if there's any spots left, we'll find something for you. Maybe we put you back in the overflow room because we really don't want anybody to see you. Don't want to show up on the live stream dressed like that, right? Again, think. What does James chapter 2 mean for you now? See, in the early church, most, or a lot of, I don't say most, maybe a lot of is a better word, a lot of these new Christians were lower class, lower income. Because let's be honest, if we know what we know when we read the New Testament, the Pharisees, the Jewish rulers, the people that Jesus was usually upset with, those are usually the people that had the money, right? But man, I'm beginning to wonder, did James write this because there would be a temptation to make over it, like if you had a Roman citizen or maybe a member of the Jewish ruling party that decided to become a Christian? You might be tempted to go, look who we got. Look who we got. They've converted to Christianity. Remember how important they were. Remember where they sat in the synagogue? Remember their family? You know they live over in that corner in that big house, and they got those 2 new chariots sitting out front in the driveway. This might be a great recruiting tool. James is saying, no, don't do that. Don't. It's not about how important they are, or famous they are, how beautiful they are, how rich they are. Man, I so bad was thinking I thought about trying to bribe one of my boys to just dress up, but I thought y'all'd recognize him. and just some old nasty clothes and, put some kind of hat on, or I don't know. I was trying to think, what could I do to the point of getting somebody to come get me or Ralph or somebody to say, we got some troublemaker over here. But I thought, that's so mean. I shouldn't do that. Because then they might wind up y'all might actually arrest them. And y'all would have him off in the lockup before I go, wait, that's Gates. He's okay. He'll fix your back. Don't take him to prison. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, when I first became a Christian, I was a hippie. I had hair way down below my shoulder blades, and I had a beard down to here. And we went to see her mother and father-in-law in San Angelo. And on the way back, we stopped in a place called Ranger, Texas, and went to a Church of Christ. And when we walked in, the preacher was preaching. He kind of hid down James's alley. He says, "Don't be judging someone by their appearance." I was the only man in that building that had long hair and a beard.
Well, Jesus had long hair and a beard, didn't he? The picture I had in my Bible, it looks at. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm turning into my dad. It's the stuff he says. My grandmother would get so mad at him about his beard that came down to here, and he'd say, "Mother, look at this." And he would open up this big old Bible she kept on her coffee table and said, "Look, Jesus looks just like that, Mother."
We had what was called back then the Jesus movement.
Yeah. Well, there's a movie. Have you seen the movie?
No, but
Oh, well, you lived it. I guess you don't need to see the. Yeah.
at the church we were at, we had 30 young people baptized in a month. And they were coming in by the herds. And some of the elders or some of the people in the church did not want their clean young teenagers associating with them. And they put a stop to it.
Well, you need to go see that movie, The Jesus Revolution.
But they didn't stop Jesus' movement.
Yeah, I know. But you need to go see the movie, because there's a scene in that movie that it literally brought me to tears of what you're talking about. It's when they came in and said, they're going to dirty up our carpet. And thankfully, I remember when we built this building, our elders said, we hope we have to replace the carpet within a year. Why? Because we want people to use it.
Their worst fear was that the elders' daughters were going to marry some of these long-haired.
I think Louis Gazard would say, I don't think I told that, brother, but let's go ahead. Listen, let's move on to the next verse, all right? Because he keeps it going. He keeps it going, all right? We're going to do about 10 more minutes, and we're going to get out of here. Listen to me, dear brothers and sisters. This is verse 5, James 2. Hasn't God chosen the poor in this world to be rich in faith? Aren't they the ones who will inherit the kingdom he promised to those who love him? James says, hey, you know what? This should be the opposite. He says, don't put the rich in a special place. Don't honor the rich. Don't show favoritism. In fact, it's the opposite. James saying we should be clamoring to help the poor. Now, this next section, there's a verse in this next section to me that's a little bit scary. Verse 6 through 9. But you dishonor the poor. And he reminds him, he says, isn't it the rich that oppress you and drag you into court? I mean, these very people, James is pointing out to them, these very people that you want to honor, these very people that you want to give them a special spot, he's saying, aren't they the ones who take you to court? Aren't they the ones who slander Jesus, whose noble name you bear? Yes, indeed, it's good when you obey the royal law as found in the Scriptures. Love your neighbor as yourself. But look at this next verse. But if you favor some people over others, you are committing a sin. Now, I know that verse, it may be a little bit difficult to kind of think through. Let me say it again. What does it say now? If you favor some people, it is a sin. We don't use that word a lot, sin. But if you favor some people over others, you're committing a sin. You're guilty of breaking the law. And I'm just trying to picture myself as one of these early Jewish Christians, and I'm on the run. Maybe I've lost my house, and I'm reading this letter. I'm like, okay, James, what are you trying to say? Rubel Shelley I guess we can quote him now. He's okay. Back in the 80s, we couldn't quote him, but he wrote a book on this that we actually studied it at Mars Hill in the 80s. But here's a quote on his book from James. He said, the church should be a place. This was written in like 1983. The church should be the place where worldly standards and judgment and discrimination are abandoned. Again, it's written 40 years ago. So don't try to read anything into it, any 2000. This is written by Shelley 40 years ago. The church should be the place where worldly standards and judgment and discrimination are abandoned. James goes on to say in chapter 2, we're going to wrap this thing up. For the person who keeps all of the laws except one is as guilty as a person who has broken all of God's laws. For the same God who said you must not commit adultery also said you must not murder. So if you murder someone but do not commit adultery, you've still broken the law. And I want you to make sure you get what he's saying. He's just trying to point out to him is that, and I think we do this, we kind of rank sins. You know? I mean, oh, now the sexual sins, though, now listen, you're horrible. You're in a whole nother. But if you gossip and cheat people, whatever, nobody really knows about that, we'll still put you in a good seat over here. Sin is sin. You're just as guilty if you, well, I committed this one, but not this one. James says, well, you still have broken the law. See, the Jews of the day, they really thought, a lot of them thought they were obligated just to their people, right? People that are on the same social plane as me. So when James starts talking about this stuff, or when they hear the whole love the neighbor thing, their mind goes to what? People just like them. You're just like me. You look like me. We're within 10% of the same income bracket with each other. We live in the same neighborhood. Oh yeah, I love my neighbor as myself. That's the person who looks just like me. Except, and to do this, they struggled with Gentiles. They struggled with, I'll accept you. We'll be equal as long as you do these few little things here that I think you still need to do to be like me. There is no Jesus plus in the gospel. And that's why that parable of the Good Samaritan was so important. Another race, another religion, and Jesus says, go and do likewise. All right, we're going to finish this up right here, this section through verse 13. So whatever you say, whatever you do, remember that you will be judged by the law that sets you free. There will be no mercy for those who have not shown mercy to others. Let that sink in. But Mark, that was written to the Jewish people and the scattered. I don't know. I'm going to take it that it might help me out in 2023 too. There will be no mercy for those who have not shown mercy to others. Do we need to be merciful to others? No judgment. No, you're better than me or worse than me. Is that, my goodness, we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of Christ. And man, so thankful that he sent his son to die on the cross for us. And that's what saves us. There's no mercy for those who have not shown mercy to others. But if you have been merciful, God will be merciful when he judges you. If you have been merciful, God will be merciful when he judges you. If you have been merciful, God will be merciful when he judges you. Judgment. Man, do y'all get how much mercy we've been shown? We were all, and this is the part of the gospel message that sometimes we don't want to talk about, we were all sick and dirty with sin. That's what we were. The Father knows everything we've done. He knows everything we've thought. He knows things that nobody else knows about us. And he didn't refuse us. He didn't say, oh, Tim, see, Tim's always over there to my right. He didn't say, Tim, now listen, I'm going to forgive sinners except you. Now you have sinned. I'm not going to. That's not what it says. He shows us mercy, and then he says, hey, Mark, I showed you mercy. I want you to go do the same. It's not rocket science. I mean, is it? I have a feeling that a lot of us in this room, we talked earlier, we started off talking about our trials. I feel like sometimes some of us have gone through trials and we have, in our mind, decided that we're not worthy of the love of Jesus because of what we've done or what we're going through. James says in chapter 2, listen, you can't show somebody's better than somebody. Now, he gives the example of money and clothes and fancy stuff. I believe to this Jewish community, it also was a background message is, you're not better than the Gentiles. Sin was sin, and we're all saved through the blood of Jesus. So that's that first section. That doesn't get us through the whole chapter. There's a whole another little section there in chapter 2. Before we get to, oh my goodness, I can't believe it's going to time out this way. I may have to skip it because Easter times out with James 3. Can we really talk about the tongue and the bad stuff we say on Easter? I don't know. We'll figure it out. We may have to skip it and come back to chapter 3 because we'll have a bunch of visitors be like, well, I visited Cross Point and that dude was up there talking about all the bad stuff we say. We'll see what happens. But next week, be back here for the panel led by Ben Campbell to dig more into these first 2 chapters in James, okay? Let's have a prayer and we'll get you out of here. Father, thank you so much for how you love us. We thank you for the words in Scripture. Thank you for those that have been willing to read these last few weeks and just let your words sink into our hearts. And we may not get all this right and exact words and meanings, but just help us, Father, to love more, to show mercy, to not show favoritism, to live like the way you would want us to live as Christ followers. We thank you for your Son, Jesus, and everything that you do for us, your love, your grace, and your mercy. We ask this prayer in his name. Amen. Mary Jane is this morning. She texted me. She goes, don't shoot me. I know I'm supposed to read. When Ed's out of town, I'm going to go church. I'm not going to shoot you. Your niece? No. I had a lady come up to church. Oh, no. Killed my back. Then I had a tree down on the fence. I cut most of it up yesterday. Good time.
God bless you. Have a good day. It's worse than anybody. Change everything. you since I was a little boy.
Well, I can't remember you being, maybe as a little tiny deal.
I'm sure you don't. I mean, it's easier for people younger.
You know, I
What
didn't
do you-
remember you when you grew up. I just, I was a teen, but I remember.
See, the younger, you think about it, when you're younger, you remember the older ones, but the older ones have no clue who the little ones were.
She told me she had finalized it, and I don't remember what she told me. I'm gonna text her right now. She's sleeping.